Hello, ladies and gentlemen. As always, I'm your host, Airsoft Al, and I kind of want to answer something I've been kind of debating on whether we're actually talking about it because I know a lot of people have very vocal opinions on this. I know Scott Slade Holdenbeck talk about this, and really even Tony has talked about this. But I kind of want to talk about this subject for a little bit because I myself have been debating this one. But when actually really thinking about it, I think we can all agree on certain criteria where this actually is useful in airsoft. And that is, are iron sights really needed in airsoft? Now, for those of you who don't know what iron sights are, let me go ahead and help you out with that. Iron sights, by definition, are these. Now, this one right here is known as a diopter iron sight that you would commonly find on a G3 rifle. An iron sight are these right here, which these are fixed iron sights. These are this one's a hooded iron sight that you can actually see. More or less, this is for anyone who's ever actually owned a 22 or even a hunting rifle, anything of that nature. These are what you would use to acquire your target, essentially. But because we're shooting 6mm BBs, and most, if not everyone, uses white BBs or some other bright colored BBs, be it pink, green, or otherwise, then a lot of people will say, oh yeah, no, they're not needed. But I want to kind of go a little bit more in depth into that. In my opinion, I use iron sights because a lot of my guns are shooting true, and I play in the woods, like a lot of woods. So while yes, I will probably use an optic or even some sort of magnified optic, because of my stigma in my right eye, that doesn't mean I don't still use these as backup, because these actually are very useful still. Now, let me just go ahead and say this now. Iron sights are pretty useless in a CQB environment, or even CQC, because the target is usually about pretty close to you, so you don't really need iron sights. So yeah, you can basically completely remove the iron sight and just use the rail or even an optic if you have to. Even then, a lot of people probably won't use optics and they'll do like the speed softers and just completely use the rail as a whole. But at the same time, for those of us like myself who play out in the woods, who have their guns shooting laser beams out, then yeah, no, we're going to use iron sights. I myself use iron sights a lot. I actually have a few guns here that are shooting true, and ones I do use iron sights on or have used iron sights on. Let's just go ahead and go with the cheapest to the most expensive. So, going over to the HK416 here, you might not think that this being a sub $100 gun or even a sub $50 gun, if you buy from Manstore using my coupon code AirsoftAL, save 7% off your entire purchase, you'd think that iron sights aren't needed. That's not true. I have used iron sights on this, and even with a hop-up, I've used these, which these are Ameritech, American Tactical iron sights. I have used these a lot, and they have worked out pretty well. Now, this gun actually does shoot out pretty far out, especially after my upgrades to it. It's shooting out about 120 to about 150 feet. And past the 110 mark, I'm losing sight of the BB. But even doing basic testing, basic target shooting to make sure the thing still shoots pretty good, even 0.25s, it's hitting on target. It really is. So that's just more or less how it operates. And that's just this one. Going back to the HK G3, even with the diopter sights, I'm able to hit at the target. I'm able to actually hit on target even at about 120 feet. But past that, it starts getting a little anticipation. That's when the BBs start actually going all over the place. I even gave this to a buddy, to my friend's little brother, Timmy, who actually just used straight iron sights on our last battle, which I did a live stream on Facebook before YouTube took it down on... Well, I did do a live stream on YouTube before they took it down, all that good jazz, but he lit me up at past 100 feet. At about 115 feet, he was using straight iron sights on this, and he nailed me in the head. Yes, it was in full auto, but then again, in heavy woods, when you only have that one target, I believe the setting he had on was around the 200-yard mark on this if it was real steel, but in reality, for this, it was just at the 2 setting, and he was able to nail me with that. But then again, you can just leave it at the 1 mark on this, and he was still able to nail me pretty good. He's like me. He's a traditional shooter, a good old country boy. He was raised on that. That's more or less how we do shoot down here, is we shoot mostly iron sights. Moving on, of course, to the TAC 6, and this one is a good example of a fixed hop-up gun. Now, here's the big distinction between a fixed hop-up gun and a hop-up gun. A fixed hop-up gun is a fixed hop-up. But this one right here actually reaches out pretty far, actually. I'm really impressed by it. The iron sights it does come with are zeroed already, or at least I did do a little bit of finicking with it because, wind, all that good jazz. But the iron sights it does come with are, or at least the front being a fiber optic, it actually does really well. And even with this little peephole sight that it is, kind of reminiscent of a high point carbine, or carbine, whichever designation you want to go with, it does hit true. It hits straight to home, it hits true, and I might actually have the laser sight on here, the laser here, lined up with the iron sights because it's just that good. It does hit true to form with just iron sights. Now, yes, I do have an optic on here, and we will do a video on that later, another time, talking about our optics, really still viable option, more or less, or optics still viable option, airsoft, all that good jazz. But iron sights on this, on a fixed hop-up gun, still true to home. They are good for what they are, and definitely should still be considered really good. Even with the bright white BBs I still use iron sights on this because I know exactly where this is shooting. The iron sights are lined up exactly where the BB is going, be it 0.2, 0.25, or even 0.28, or even heavier. The iron sights on this will still go where they're going. Now, another gun, of course, is when we start talking about the more upgraded guns, the very highly, like you've sunk a lot of money into them, and that's where the next one comes in, is one that you'll see a ton of in the airsoft world, and that is, of course, custom M4s. Now, this one in particular is my custom G&G Combat Machine M4. This one has almost been fully upgraded. I just need a Type 4 inner barrel in here, and again, there's a lot in this, but even then, with it set up the way it is, it's still hitting true to home, and even though the iron sights is blocked by this, which I might set this back over to the side, it's still a really, really fun, really good gun. Even with the optic itself, I can still, if I wanted to remove this, I've got the iron sights set up to hit at about 115 feet, because that's where I've got it zeroed in at. And yes, it will hit that, and even when playing with this, and yes, I did play with this a lot, and even at some games where I did have this set up for just strictly iron sights, it would hit where it needed to hit. It's an honestly really, really good setup. I mean, yes, a lot of you are probably going to comment in the comment section saying, oh, you shouldn't use iron sights, they're worthless, they're useless, but then again, we're playing out in the woods. So, I think that's a big designation there, and I've said it already, but when it comes to airsoft, it depends on where you're playing. If you're playing in the woods where you're not moving a lot and you can actually take your time and you can actually set up and line up your shot, and you have the right weight BBs, be it 0.25 or 0.28s or even 0.30s, those BBs are going to go flying straight. So lining up your iron sights and just dialing them in to where those BBs are landing at the certain range you have it set up for, it's going to hit either way. And I know that sounds a little weird and strange, saying, we need to zero in for BBs. I'm only saying that for woodland play. I'm not saying that for, say, like CQB, because once again, CQB, you could just forget the iron sights because you are fighting in very close quarter combat. You can basically have both eyes open and just be able to fire exactly where those BBs are going. But once again, it's completely dependent on where you're playing, what weight BBs you're using, what gun you're using, what kind of upgrades you put into that gun, and that's a whole other video I'm going to talk about another day. But one gun I know for sure that I personally love, and I love the platform and have found new love for it thanks to Brandon Herrera, aka the AK guy, is this little bad boy right here, the AK platform. The AK platform is one of those guns where it's just already good out of the box. I have not met anyone who's ever said their gun was bad out of the box. In reality, I've talked to a lot of guys who've actually played with their AK straight out of the box. It's worked very well out of the box. Again, I've talked to a lot of guys who've used the AK, and they've said everything the same way, is that it's great out of the box. I don't have to do anything to it, it just works. And that's exactly what I agree with, because I've used the iron sights on this when it didn't have the rails that I put on here. I just had the straight, basic, plain handguard, which I might replace this and just basically drill holes into it and put a rail on it, but the AK itself is a good example of just the iron sights working. They do work well. You do get a very good sight picture with it, and I have got this dialed in for .2s and .25s. And this actually has hit where I've needed to go. But whenever I've been in very extreme close quarter combat, I will completely forget the iron sights and just go like this and just point and click. That's how I've always more or less have done it. Now, is that a good thing? It's up to you, really, if it's a good thing or not, that you should only just point and shoot. But then again, that's CQB logic right there and Call of Duty logic, if you really want to go with that. But, like I said, it's completely debatable. And believe me, this debate will go on for years, but I thought I'd just go ahead and voice my opinion on iron sights and whether or not they're still a viable option. And in my opinion, yes. Yes, they are. Iron sights will never go away. Iron sights will always have a place in airsoft, especially for those of us like myself who are traditional shooters, who were raised on purely iron sights and never actually used optics. I have always been one for iron sights. Even when a gun doesn't have iron sights, I will try and put one on there. Or if it's something where the iron sights are built in, I will not ignore the iron sights, I will use the iron sights. Even when I have to put an optic on here, I will have a riser where it has a nice little cut through in it, if you can see it right there, where I can still line up my iron sights, where I can still, if I'm not able to use my optic as such, I can still go to an iron sight. Again, it's completely my own opinion, and it is totally and wholly an opinion. But I'd also love to hear your opinion on iron sights. Do you believe there's still a place for them in airsoft, and do you believe there's still a viable option as backup sights? Again, I'd love to hear your opinion, or even see a response video from you. Again, wholly an opinion-based piece on this video, but then again, that's all we have is an opinion. So let me know in the comment section down below if you believe iron sights are completely and utterly worthless and they shouldn't be in airsoft, be it CQB or even long-range engagements or even woodland play. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, I've been Airsoft Al, the Commons Airsofter, who voices his opinion on iron sights and whether or not they should still be attached to guns for aesthetic reasons or even practicality reasons. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, I will see you all in the next video. Till next time, later!